Pokemon Legends EA did something really unexpected, and that's add a competitive ranked mode to this game with this all new battle system. So today I'm here to talk to you guys and break down everything you need to know to train competitive Pokemon in Pokemon Legends EA and climb that ranked ladder. So make sure you're subbed for more Pokemon EA stuff in the future, but let's get into it. So first off, this is different from the traditional competitive format. Standard competitive Pokemon found in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet is a double battles format with the rotating formats of Pokemon allowed in play. And obviously, Legends ZA doesn't have this battle system. So ZA competitive is a 1v1v1v1 or a 4-player free-for-all, meaning it is less structured and more chaotic, but there still is merit to knowing how to build your competitive Pokemon and knowing how to train your team properly. For example, I built this team and I haven't lost a single battle yet, and I'm just a couple ranks off of being able to be the top rank in ZA. Now, online teams have some rules to them in Pokemon Legends EA. First and foremost, no two Pokemon can be the same on any given team. That means you can't have two Gyarados, two Pikachu, whatever the case may be. You can't have two of the same Pokemon. You also cannot have two of the same items. So say two Pokemon have a citrus berry, that's not allowed. You cannot do that in online play. And the ultimate goal is to knock out more Pokemon than everyone else, which leads to some really chaotic and fun and honestly a pretty laid back system that I really enjoy. So let's get into the basics. Let's start with just what you need to know to get in and start playing. First and foremost, let's talk about the type chart. You need to know your type matchups. You need to know what's super effective against stuff. You need to know what stuff can't hit certain Pokemon. For example, ghost types can't hit normal type Pokemon, and you need to know what you can resist to be able to swap effectively in competitive play. And you'll learn this by simply playing the game. The more you play the game, the more you learn your type matchups. That's just how Pokemon works inherently. However, there are type charts out there that you can look up that will help you throughout this process. The next thing we need to talk about are stats. So if I go into my boxes here and I go to, let's just go to my Meganium here and I check summary, we go down to the summary, there are 6 stats you need to be aware of, and pretty much they're all the same as previous games with the exception of one. So obviously your HP increases the amount of health that your Pokemon has. Your attack stat is going to increase the amount of damage physical moves do. Defense is going to resist the damage from incoming physical moves. Special attack is going to raise your special moves damage, and then special defense obviously is going to resist the damage from oncoming special attacks. But speed is the variable that is different in this game compared to other Pokemon games. In traditional Pokemon games, speed determines a Pokemon's order in battle. However, in Pokemon Legends EA, speed affects a Pokemon's move cooldowns in this game. So if I go to my moves and I hover them, I can actually see the cooldown time on them. The higher your speed is, the lower that cooldown is actually going to be. The other important thing you need to know is the different type of attacks that are available. For example, there are physical attacks as well as special attacks. So you can see by this icon here, Leaf Blade is a physical attack. And being that my Meganium has a higher attack stat than special attack stat, this would be more beneficial. However, if I have a Pokemon that has a higher special attack stat, this icon here indicates the special attacks. This would be a more beneficial attack. Then there are also additional moves that you can use like Light Screen and Reflect or Thunder Wave, things of that nature that are going to apply effects to the battlefield, whether it be to your Pokemon or to other Pokemon, and those are indicated by this icon here. But now that we've covered the basics, we need to get into the nitty-gritty details of training Pokemon. And we're going to start with EVs and IVs. So starting with IVs, or individual values, these are stats a Pokemon is born or caught with. Now, in Pokemon Legends EA, there is no breeding mechanic, meaning IVs are just what the Pokemon has when you catch them. And until you beat the game, they cannot be checked. But upon rolling credits, as soon as you open your boxes, you'll see you'll have access to the judge function, allowing you to press the right stick in on the Pokemon stat page. And this can be done right here in the summary page. All you do, press your right stick in and you'll see the best, decent, all those are your IVs. Best is the best. It's the perfect IV. And then there's no good, which is the 0 IV. Now, the thing to note in this game is in previous entries in the games that have the traditional battle system, the no good speed stat was actually beneficial, and no good attack or special attack could be beneficial in certain situations. But in regards to specifically speed in this game, there's no trick room or something that's going to change the speed stats of the other Pokemon around you. So having a no good speed stat does not have near as much value in this particular game that it did in other games with the more traditional system. So how I've been training my Pokemon personally, I just want them all to have best. Now, IVs can actually be raised through the use of bottle caps. A standard bottle cap can be used to raise one IV to max, and a gold bottle cap will raise all the IVs to max, and this is called hyper training. And you can use bottle caps to hyper train over here at the Justice Dojo. If you talk to this person right here, you'll be able to actually level IV up to max with a bottle cap. However, you have to have a Pokemon at level 50 in order to hyper train them. Now, bottle caps can be acquired by completing some of Mabel's research tasks. You can get some bottle caps here at level 36. If we scroll down, there's some gold bottle caps that you get at level 48. So this is one way to acquire them, but the other way to acquire them is by participating in the Infinite ZA Royale in the post game. These are rewards for doing your challenge matches after getting your challenger ticket. Moving on from IVs though, we're going to talk about EVs, and these are effort values, or stats that can be trained onto a Pokemon through a variety of different ways. EVs can be increased by battling, giving Pokemon vitamins, or giving Pokemon a feather. Now, what is important to know is that a Pokemon can have a total of 510 EVs equipped, with a max of 252 EVs in one individual stat, meaning that if you want to have a max HP stat, you would have 252 EVs there, but that is the max number of EVs that you can slot into that one stat pool. And when training, 4 EVs are equal to 1 stat point boost. And these can be checked in the stat summary screen of a Pokemon by pushing down on the right stick. So much like if you were going to look at your IVs, you can go back into the summary tab here and then just shift it down, and you'll be able to see where your EVs are distributed. Now, obviously this Pokemon's a little wonky. I did not actually reset it or do anything to train this Pokemon properly, but you can see there's some spikes toward the special attack, toward the attack, and toward the speed for this particular Meganium. Now, my preferred way to EV train is by using vitamins, and vitamins will raise a Pokemon's stat EV that it corresponds to by 10 EVs. So it takes a total of 26 vitamins to raise any one stat to that max 252 EVs. And vitamins go as follow. HP up goes for HP, protein goes for attack, iron goes for defense, calcium goes for special attack, zinc goes for special defense, and carbos goes for speed. And these can be bought just at a Pokemon Center. You don't have to go anywhere special to buy these, and they are 5,000 Pokedollars per vitamin. Now, feathers are for more particular EV training because they only provide 1 EV per feather. There is a health feather for HP, the muscle feather adds more attack EVs, the resist feather adds more defense, the Genius Feather adds more special attack, Clever Feather adds more special defense, and Swift Feather adds more speed. Now, unlike vitamins, these can only be collected as overworld drops that you see lying on the ground, so you just kind of got to run around and look for those little shinies that are all over the place. And once you see those, that's how you collect these. You'll also earn them as rewards for doing the online battle system. So these are a little bit more complicated to get your hands on than using something like the vitamins. Now, I did also say earlier that you can also increase EVs by battling wild Pokemon. However, with the game being as new as it is, there's not many guides out right now showing which Pokemon give which EVs. But on top of that, I find this to be kind of a poor way to go about actually EV training Pokemon, because wild Pokemon like to cluster up in this game, and moves can KO multiple Pokemon if they are close enough to one another, which means if 2 different Pokemon run up to you and you knock them both out, you could get an EV you didn't want, making this method far less desirable in this game than it was in previous games where you could only battle 1 Pokemon at a time. However, it's worth noting that if you do want to train EVs this way, any Pokemon in your party will receive the EVs for completing a battle. So if I was trying to EV train my Ampharos here and I was knocking out a bunch of Pokemon, every other Pokemon that I have in my party would also gain those EVs. So if you're EV training, make sure that you have only the Pokemon you want to gain those EVs in your party. Now, there's also some items that can make battling wild Pokemon to train EVs a little bit easier. So I'm over here at the Quasartico Inc. headquarters where you buy the Mega Stones. And there are some items here that you can purchase that will make this process easier. And these are the power items. And these, if a Pokemon holds them while they are training to get EVs, they will gain 8 additional EVs for whatever they are currently working toward. So the Power Weight is for HP, the Power Bracer is for attack, Power Belt is for defense, the Power Lens is for special attack, the Power Band is for special defense, then Power Anklet is for speed. Now, with the idea that you can earn EVs by battling wild Pokemon, that means that any Pokemon that you use throughout your playthrough that you did not already EV train was gaining EVs by doing battles with wild Pokemon or other trainers. So those Pokemon need to be changed in order to use them more effectively in competitive play. However, don't fear. there is a way to reset EVs for a Pokemon that you're using. Now, you can use berries, but honestly, I think this method kind of sucks in this game personally. Like you see here with the Kelpsy berry, this will lower the attack stat of a Pokemon, and every berry that corresponds to a particular stat will lower the EVs by 10. Much like vitamins raise the EVs by 10, the berries lower them by 10. However, there's a much easier way to go about lowering EVs in this game. So if you actually go over to the Rust Syndicate office, you can lower EVs far easier than by using the berries, and you also don't have to buy or farm any of the berries, which is much nicer. If you just go inside here, as you can see, if I go over to my Meganium, like we saw earlier, this thing already has a bunch of stats on it because of me using it throughout my playthrough. But if I walk over here, it'll say, do you need a fresh start? And you can clear away the base points by spending 5 Mega Shards. So let's do it here. And I'm going to select my Meganium, and we're going to select it, and we're going to lower it, and we're going to hit yes. And that's going to clear away all the EVs off my Meganium. So if I go back into my box, now that we've cleared everything away, I can hit check summary. I can scroll down and I lower it, and you can see that that stat distribution is now neutral. There's no spikes going any one direction. This Pokemon is back to its base value, meaning I could go in and effectively EV train this Pokemon to use it in competitive play. However, it is worth mentioning that this portion right here only unlocks after you complete main mission 20 in the main story. So you do not have access to this until a little bit further into the game. Now, the next thing you need to be aware of is natures. Every Pokemon that you catch comes with a nature that it already has. And these can do things such as raise a stat, but also lower a stat. So for example, an adamant nature would raise the attack stat, but lower the special attack stat. Or some natures are just neutral and they don't have any effect on stats. And you can check this in game. So you can go in and look at a Pokemon. Let's look at Meganium here just for the sake of the video, and here you can see it's a quirky nature. And if I go in and I look at the stat screen, you can see that there's no up or down arrows on any of my stats. So the quirky nature just means everything's neutral. However, if I go over here, you can see that I have a modest camera up. So my special attack stat is up and my attack stat is down, and I can see right here this Pokemon has a modest nature, which is actually pretty good for camera up. So that's what you need to be looking for, but this can also be changed through the use of mints. Now, much like feathers, mints can actually be found on the ground as shiny objects, but you can also buy them in this game. So if I go over here, this is where I go to buy them. I think there's another location, but this is the most easy to find location for the mints. I go over to Wild Area 3, and the actual location for the mint vendors, and there's a couple more floating around over here, but the main spot is over here. There's another one just around this area. If you run around, you'll definitely find them. But if you come over here and you loop around this building here on the left, you'll come up this way and you'll sneak around here. Let me see where I'm at. I gotta go a little farther here. You come right here and you'll see this little hidden vendor spot, right? You can come back here. Any of these ladies with the flower carts, they are going to sell mints, and each mint sells for 20,000 Pokédollars. However, the thing to note is that the mints correspond directly to what the nature you're looking for is. So if you're looking for a adamant nature, you want an adamant mint. It's that simple. You don't have to overthink this at all, and all you have to do is apply it to whatever Pokemon you want to. So for the sake of conversation, let's find a modest mint. Let's just find a modest mint here. I'm gonna keep looking. There's a couple different ladies here with the flowers. Let's see, modest. There we go. Let me buy one modest mint. And I'm going to apply this here. I'm going to go into my satchel. I'm going to find my mint. Oh, there it is. And I'm going to use it on my Meganium. So this is going to change my Meganium's nature to modest. Modest increases my special attack and lowers my attack stat. So if I look at Meganium here, I can see that my special attack is now increased and my attack is now lowered. Now, this mechanic that we're going to talk about here is exclusive to Legends ZA. Everything that we covered before, EVs, IVs, natures, that's all useful outside of ZA. However, this new mechanic called plus moves was added in Pokemon Legends ZA. So back on Meganium here, we're looking at our moves. You can see that all of these moves here, minus Dazzling Gleam, have a plus next to them. That means they are a plus move. What these moves are essentially mega moves that add additional power to the Pokemon move. So, for example, if there's a Pokemon that you want to use in competitive play that doesn't have a Mega Evolution, that means that you can press the start button before you send the attack off to activate the plus move, and it will do mega level power damage, versus if you're mega evolved, it'll automatically be a plus move. So you can use Pokemon that don't have mega evolutions and use the mega energy to power up your attacks to have more powerful moves without actually having to mega evolve, and that's what the plus moves are. And you can actually get these a number of different ways. You can get them, one, by just leveling up Pokemon. Some moves will naturally become plus moves. However, what you can also do is go into your satchel and you'll scroll down, and it's called the Seed of Mastery, and by using this particular item, you will be able to change a move to a plus move for a particular Pokemon. And these can be acquired by just battling or catching alpha Pokemon. These are a common drop for that. So just farm a bunch of alpha Pokemon. You see I already have 36. I haven't used any of them. So you could just like farm alpha Pokemon, and it's a really easy way to grind out Seeds of Mastery to get those plus moves for your Pokemon. And like I said, if you don't know how to use these moves when you're targeting a Pokemon, let me throw out my Meganium here. When you're targeting a Pokemon, if you press the plus button, you see there's a little highlight that changes the move to a plus move. So it'll charge a little bit of your mega energy to use the attack to then give it that extra damage. Now, we talked about a lot of different things here. We talked about all the different resources that you're going to need, and obviously to get all of these resources, you're going to need some money. And the best way, in my opinion, to grind money in this particular game is by doing the ZA Royale. By collecting all the coins that you see lying on the ground, by doing the bonus cards, you're going to be able to collect a ton of money. And this is a pretty easy method. You can easily get like 100,000 to 200,000 per night, and you could just sit on a bench and reset this while you're watching a stream, while you're watching Netflix, while you're doing something else. You could just grind this to get a bunch of money in order to buy all these resources, if that's the route you want to go with, like vitamins and things of that nature. Also, picking up shiny objects on the ground is a good way to get items to just sell at the Pokemon centers. So you can just sell items to get additional money. So while you're running around doing your thing, make sure you're grabbing all those shinies, because there's plenty of stuff that you don't need that you can sell to get that extra money. And honestly, I think that this is a fine method of grinding money, simply because of the fact that you can complete the ZA Royale to also get bottle caps, which you need anyways in order to get the perfect IVs on your Pokemon. Now we're going to get into more of the battle oriented stuff. So we're going to talk about how to actually get into this game. So first thing that you need to be aware of are the status conditions in this game, because they work a bit differently than how they do in the traditional Pokemon games. First up, let's talk about poison. That just does damage over time. So any Pokemon that's affected by poison is going to take some damage over time. Burn is going to do damage over time, but it also reduces the damage of physical moves used by the burnt Pokemon. Drowsy is the sleep condition in this game, and this raises cooldown times of moves. It slows those cooldown times. Paralysis slows a Pokemon's movement speed, making it harder for that Pokemon to reposition or dodge attacks. Confusion causes the affected Pokemon to have a higher chance of missing attacks, and Frozen means the Pokemon is literally just frozen and stuck there and cannot move or attack until it thaws out. Now we're going to jump into actual team building in this game. How do you go about building a team for ranked ZA play? Now, the one thing I do want to note that is different from other games is that IVs don't feel near as important. Yes, if you want to have the most min-maxed Pokemon, IVs are crucial for that operation. However, none of the Pokemon that I've been using to climb the rank ladder, and I again have not lost a match yet, and I'm almost max rank, my Pokemon do not have max IVs. I do not have enough bottle caps yet to get them all to the perfect stats for their IVs. So that is something to note there. So a team for competitive ranked ZA games are a team of 3 Pokemon. You only need 3 Pokemon. Unlike other games where you train a team of 6 Pokemon, you only need 3 in this game, which is nice because it means you need to farm for less resources to get into this. And the big thing that you want to make sure that you have is Pokemon that cover each other's weaknesses. For example, I have Gyarados on this team. Gyarados is the Pokemon that I lead with when I go into battle. However, Gyarados is super weak to electric type attacks. It's a water flying type, meaning it has a 4 times weakness to electric type attacks, which is why I have Excadrill. Excadrill is on this team because it is a ground type Pokemon, meaning if something shoots a electric type attack at me, I can swap into Excadrill, which does not take damage from electric type attacks, which is really nice. The other Pokemon I have on this team is Gardevoir, and Gardevoir is weak to steel types because it is a fairy type Pokemon. And both my Gyarados as well as my Excadrill are going to be able to eat steel type hits that are coming in at my Gardevoir, meaning that I can swap them in safely to eat the attack. So the big thing is you want to have the Pokemon cover the weaknesses of the other. And the other thing is you want to make sure your moves are able to cover those Pokemon as well. So you're able to that way cover the attacks that you need to do in order to actually get the KOs to win the battles. Now, a good strategy to follow as far as team building goes is to have a tank Pokemon, which in my case is my Gyarados. My Gyarados is my big bruiser Pokemon that can go out and eat a bunch of hits from my Pokemon and then be able to swap out and allow these two smaller, more frail Pokemon to deal a bunch of damage and take KOs. Now, a very common strategy that we're seeing right now is 2 tank Pokemon on a team. You can run something like Gyarados and then maybe something like Emboar or something else that has a lot of bulk to it with one Pokemon that's more frail like Gardevoir to go in and sweep. However, there are merits to having a more offensive strategy like the team that I have here with 2 Pokemon that are relatively frail, but it can also dish out a ton of damage. So you can see I have my Excadrill and my Gardevoir. Both are very frail Pokemon and may not really like taking a bunch of hits, but they deal a ton of damage and they secure me a ton of KOs. Now, one thing to note is that alpha Pokemon can actually be a risk and reward situation in this particular game. So as you can see here, I have my Gyarados, and this is an alpha Gyarados. Now, the thing about alpha Pokemon is that when you catch them, occasionally they have access to certain moves that they would not normally learn, meaning that they have access to a certain coverage type that they can use in competitive play that gives them an advantage. However, the one thing to note about alpha Pokemon is their size, and some beam attacks that are used by other Pokemon are based on the Pokemon's hitbox. So the bigger that the Pokemon is, the easier it is to hit, meaning that some alpha Pokemon can actually be a hindrance to your team simply because they will get hit more often because of their size. Now let's move into the actual battles in this game. So each battle lasts 3 minutes, and you'll start with the first Pokemon in your party out to enter the battle. And if your active Pokemon is knocked out, you'll be returned to the spawn where all the Pokemon are given their HP back. Each time you spawn, you can swap your active Pokemon up to 3 times, meaning you need to be strategic on when you swap your Pokemon, because once you swap those 3 times, you're stuck with whatever Pokemon is out in the active slot. Now, when you swap your Pokemon, it's worth noting that there is a very small window of invulnerability in it. And this gives you an opening to absorb some damage and not have to worry about taking a hit, and the same can be said for when you Mega Evolve a Pokemon. There's also Mega Energy scattered throughout the map, so collecting it is important to allow you to Mega Evolve your Pokemon and keep them more powered up or allow you to use more plus moves. And you can also find items that boost your Pokemon stats lying around as well, so you need to keep your eyes peeled to the battlefield around you on top of battling the opponents. And like I said at the start of the video, the goal of this game mode is to knock out as many Pokemon as possible. So strategizing when you go into attack and managing cooldowns is very important to success in this. And a solid strategy, honestly, is sitting back and waiting for an enemy to weaken a target and swooping in to kill steal the knockout and securing you a point. Just make sure you're watching out for those super effective attacks that could be flying your way so you can effectively swap your Pokemon into one that can eat the hit for you. And honestly, this rank mode is a ton of fun, and even if you don't win, you'll earn points for a number of different things throughout the match, so you can still rank up even if you aren't getting that first place slot. And all the gameplay you've seen is from Pokemon, like I said earlier, that I have not properly hyper trained, so all their IVs are out of whack, showing that this game mode is fairly casual and still very enjoyable even if you don't have all the resources to min-max your Pokemon. But like I said earlier, there is merit to min-maxing those Pokemon. If you are training your Pokemon more effectively, you're going to do more damage, you're going to be able to eat more hits, and they're going to be that much more powerful for you, securing you more wins. Now, finally, let's close off by talking about the meta. Now, right now, it's a little too early to tell what the clear meta is. Like, we just got into ranked play. We just are now testing different things out, but it does seem like a lot of different Pokemon are actually viable in the meta. You're able to get away with a lot of different team comps, and that is incredibly fun to me personally. I think that's very, very exciting. But like I said earlier, what does seem very popular is that 2 tanks with the sweeper strategy. So something like a Gyarados and another powerful tankier Pokemon with a Pokemon like Gardevoir or Excadrill that can go in and then clean up a bunch of KOs. That is a very popular strategy because they set up the other Pokemon that is more frail, that can get a lot of KOs very quickly for success by weakening targets. Another thing worth noting is that Earthquake is very popular due to its spread damage nature. So if you throw a Pokemon out and you get in the middle of all the other opponents and you hit Earthquake, it's going to hit everybody in the area, and that's very popular. So a flying type Pokemon that is able to avoid ground type damage altogether is very beneficial, which is why I have Gyarados on my particular team. All in all, this game mode is a lot of fun and is pretty easily accessible and playable, even if you do not have access to all the resources. So I hope you found this video entertaining and helpful for getting into competitive play in Pokemon Legends EA. I genuinely think that this is a really fun game mode and one that has a lot of legs to it. Like, it can go on for a long time, especially as they add more Pokemon with the DLC and things like that. As we get new megas with like Mega Chestnut that's coming out, Mega Delphox, that's all really exciting for changing the meta up. And I think as time goes on, we'll see more and more cool strategies come out with this game. And I think it's a good stepping stone for getting into actual competitive Pokemon, because this game is a little bit easier and more forgiving as far as training your Pokemon go. But everything aside from plus moves like the EVs, the IVs, the actual like team building aspect of covering your weaknesses, all that applies to Pokemon in competitive sense outside of Legends EA. So this is like a good baby's first competitive Pokemon game to get people in. So like I said, that is going to be it for this video, guys. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, comment, subscribe. It helps me out, helps the video out, and helps the channel out immensely. But until next time, peace.